I remember it like it was yesterday, the musty smell of that house, the suffocating silence that swallowed everything around it. The cold afternoon wind, almost biting, whistled through the cracked windows, but it was that cursed attic that gave me chills. The feeling that something was watching from up there was unsettling. I hadn't even stepped inside yet, but my body was already breaking out in a cold sweat, as if my instincts were screaming for me to leave. My job as a photographer often took me to strange places, but that house, hidden in the middle of nowhere, felt different. It was as if the very walls were whispering something sinister. The project seemed fairly simple. Capture images of that forgotten relic, long abandoned by time. But as I walked through the dusty halls, something felt off. Do you know that feeling when a place seems alive? Every step I took echoed, as if someone or something was following right behind me. The terror inside me was growing, but I tried to push it away, convincing myself it was just my imagination. That's when I heard it, the first creak from the attic. It wasn't a normal sound. It was agonizing, as if something was moving up there, waiting. I decided to ignore it. I kept taking photos, adjusting the camera, trying to stay focused on the job. But when I looked through the viewfinder, panic overtook me. In the last shot, right there in the attic window, a shadow. Something inhuman. The fear was palpable, my heart racing, cold sweat running down my back. Whatever it wasn't from this world. And from that moment, I knew leaving that house wouldn't be as easy as I had thought. I wasn't always this paranoid. My name is Julia, and I'm just an ordinary photographer trying to make a name for herself. I love capturing the raw beauty of forgotten places, old houses, abandoned buildings, things people don't care about anymore. They fascinate me. There's something almost eerie about them. A hidden story in every cracked wall, every creaking floorboard. This house, however, it felt different from the others. I've never been one to believe in the paranormal or urban legends, but this house seemed to have a life of its own, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I wasn't working alone either. My best friend Sarah had come to help with the shoot. She's always been the practical one, grounding me when my imagination runs wild. "It's just an old house," she said, laughing at how nervous I was. She was right, of course. Sarah never believed in ghosts or haunted houses, always dismissing the strange with an eye roll. But even she started to look uneasy after we stepped inside. Every time the wind blew or the floor creaked, I saw her nervously glancing at the ceiling. It was subtle, but enough for me to notice. As we moved through the house, setting up the equipment, things started to feel off. Not in a way I could explain, but there was a sense of dread, like we were intruding on something ancient and angry. Sarah kept shrugging it off, but I could see the tension building. It was the kind of fear that creeps up on you, quiet at first, until it tightens around your chest. I didn't want to admit it, but I could feel it too, and the discomfort was growing stronger with every step we took toward the attic. It all started with something small, almost easy to ignore. As we unpacked the last piece of equipment, Sarah and I heard a soft thud coming from the ceiling, as if something had fallen or moved in the attic. We froze for a second, exchanging uneasy glances, but Sarah just shrugged again. "Old houses make noise," she muttered, trying to sound casual. But I wasn't convinced. The sound was too deliberate, as if someone or something was up there. My stomach churned with a mix of terror and curiosity, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to seem paranoid. Not yet. As we kept working, I noticed something odd in the atmosphere. The air felt heavier, colder, like a draft was leaking from the attic, even though all the windows were shut. My camera also started acting up, the screen flickering, refusing to focus whenever I pointed it toward the ceiling. I told myself it was just faulty equipment, but deep down, I knew better. Every part of me was screaming to leave, but Sarah, being the skeptic she was, kept laughing, even as the tension mounted. I could see the fear in her eyes, though. She was just better at hiding it. Then came the moment that changed everything. I was adjusting my camera when I noticed something in the viewfinder. There, in the reflection of an old dusty mirror near the stairs, was a figure. It was faint, almost like a shadow, but undeniably there. My heart stopped. I turned, expecting to see Sarah or someone, but the space was empty. Nothing but cold air and silence. "Sarah," I whispered, my voice shaky. She looked at me, confused, but before I could explain, another thud echoed from above, this time louder, angrier. There was definitely something up there. The thuds from the attic became more frequent, each one louder than the last. It was as if something was walking above us, growing more agitated with every step. My hands trembled as I tried to steady my camera, but the equipment refused to cooperate. Every picture I took came out blurry or distorted, especially when I aimed it toward the ceiling. Sarah had stopped laughing by now, her face pale and tense. "Maybe we should take a look," she suggested, her voice barely more than a whisper. But there was no way I was going up there, not after what I saw in that mirror. As the strange occurrences continued, I realized it wasn't just my imagination running wild. The house had a life of its own, and it wasn't happy we were there. Doors that had once been open began closing on their own, creaking shut with agonizing slowness. The air grew colder, to the point where we could see our breath. Sarah tried to keep it together, but I could tell she was as scared as I was. Every corner of the house seemed to be watching us. Every shadow seemed to shift just out of sight. The feeling of dread was suffocating, as if the house itself was trying to force us out. Then it happened. We were packing up, desperate to leave, when I heard it, a low growl coming from the direction of the attic stairs. It wasn't human. My blood ran cold, and for the first time, I saw real fear in Sarah's eyes. We both froze, listening as the growl turned into a guttural snarl, followed by the unmistakable sound of something heavy dragging across the floor above us. The terror was overwhelming. This was no longer just a haunted house. There was something evil, something hungry, lurking above us, and it wasn't going to let us leave easily. Everything came to a head when we finally decided to leave. Sarah and I grabbed our things, moving quickly, not even bothering to pack properly. As we walked toward the front door, we heard it again, that low, menacing growl, but this time, closer. My heart pounded in my chest. My hands shook so violently, I could barely grasp the door handle. When I turned it, I froze. The door wouldn't budge. It was as if something on the other side was holding it shut. Panic took over. We were trapped. Sarah's face went pale, and I saw the same terror I felt reflected in her eyes. "We have to go!" she cried, her voice breaking. I pulled harder on the door, but it was no use. That's when the temperature in the room plummeted, colder than anything I had ever felt. My breath came out in shaky clouds, and a deep, guttural laugh echoed from the attic. It wasn't human. It was mocking us. The weight of the evil in that house pressed down on us, making it hard to breathe. Whatever was in the attic was coming for us, and there was nowhere to run. In that moment of pure desperation, I made a decision that would change everything. I grabbed Sarah's arm and ran, not toward the door, but toward the stairs. We had no other choice. Whatever was up there had control over the house, and if we stayed, it would kill us. I had to face it. I had to know what was hidden in the attic. The only way out was through the very thing that haunted us. As we climbed the stairs, each step creaked beneath our feet, and the darkness at the top seemed to swallow the light. I knew that once we crossed that threshold, there would be no turning back. The attic door creaked open with agonizing slowness, revealing a dark, suffocating space that seemed to stretch on forever. The growl was louder now, echoing off the wooden walls, filling every inch of that claustrophobic room with an oppressive, malevolent energy. Sarah and I stepped forward, our flashlights flickering, as if they were reluctant to illuminate the horrors before us. The air was thick with dust and the stench of decay. I could barely keep my breathing steady, fear gripping me like a vice. Then we saw it, a figure, hunched and monstrous, standing in the corner of the attic. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its skin was a sickly shade of gray, stretched tight over its skeletal frame. It wasn't entirely human, nor was it entirely something else. It was a nightmare-made flesh, and it was staring directly at us. The growling grew louder, more menacing, as it began to move slowly toward us. My heart raced as I fumbled with my camera, trying to capture an image of the beast. But the lens refused to focus. The creature seemed to feed on our fear, growing more solid and threatening with each passing second. Amid the chaos, Sarah screamed, her voice piercing the thickening darkness. She collapsed to the floor, clutching her head as if trying to block out the terror. I had no choice but to act. I grabbed her and dragged her toward the stairs, even as the creature advanced on us. Just when I thought we were done for, a blinding flash of light erupted from my camera, momentarily illuminating the room. The creature let out a blood-curdling scream, retreating into the shadows. We seized the chance to escape, stumbling down the stairs, our breaths ragged and desperate. We stumbled out of the house, our hearts pounding and our breaths coming in ragged gasps. The night air felt like a blessing compared to the suffocating fear of the attic. As we drove away, the house appeared in the rearview mirror, its dark windows like empty eyes watching us leave. I looked over at Sarah. She was silent, her face pale and her eyes wide with shock. We both knew we had barely escaped with our lives. But the terror wasn't over. It lingered, an invisible shadow following us, refusing to let us go. Days passed, but the fear never left me. I reviewed the photos I had taken that night, my hands trembling as I scrolled through the images. Among them was one that made my blood run cold. The creature, captured in the background of a photo, its eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. It was a chilling reminder of the evil we had encountered. The house, it seemed, had left its mark on us, and every creak, every gust of wind set my nerves on edge. I tried to convince myself it was all just a nightmare, but deep down, I knew better. Even now, as I write this, the fear still clings to me. Sometimes late at night, I hear the faintest echo of that growl, the sinister reminder that the creature and the house are still out there, waiting. I can't help but wonder if it's still watching us, or if there's something else out there, something even darker. One thing is certain, the house hasn't let us go, and as long as I live, I'll never forget the terror that lurked in that attic, a nightmare that continues to haunt me to this day.